Welcome back. Hope you had a nice break there. Thank you for asking the question about CJ asked, is there any recommendation for the first module or first place to start with PowerShell? I think the MS Online module is the best place to start if you're brand new learning PowerShell to be a Microsoft 365 administrator. So that's what I recommended, and I'll be actually doing that in this class. I'm going to actually do today some demonstrations using the MS Online module and installing it and getting started with the commands. So great question. Thank you for asking that. Where we left off before the break, we talked about that we're going to start with the admin centers, and that's what we're going to start with right now. So the first one we're going to focus on is the Microsoft 365 Admin Center at admin.microsoft.com. And then we're going to take a look at the Entra Admin Center at entra.microsoft.com, the Microsoft 365 Defender portal at security.microsoft.com, the Microsoft 365 Purview Compliance portal at compliance.microsoft.com, and the Exchange Admin Center at admin.exchange.microsoft.com. By the way, all admin centers, all access to anything it is always behind HTTPS. So I'm just pointing that out right now. And then the SharePoint Admin Center, the URL is whatever the original name of your tenancy was. So whatever the very original name of your tenancy, so whatever that was, dash admin.sharepoint.com. So there is no like official, like this is the URL for the SharePoint Admin Center for everybody. It's dependent upon what your original tenancy name was. And that's interesting because a lot of people, and we'll cover this in our DNS section, they forget what their original tenancy name was because they end up using just something that doesn't even matter because they're going to use their own custom domain for email addresses and things like that. And then so what happens is they forget what their tenancy name was. They have to like look it up depending on what they use. So we'll cover that though. So we're going to be spending time in the SharePoint Admin Center today, just going over where it is, what's where, what to look for, what you do in each one. The Teams Admin Centers at admin.teams.microsoft.com. The Microsoft 365 Apps Admin Center is at config.office.com. And then you will also find yourself going to the actual Azure portal here and again for different things at portal.azure.com. So this particular part of the class, this particular section, we're going to go to each of these admin centers, and I'm going to flip over and be going to the admin center and talking about, how to get there, and then what you would typically do as an admin when you get to that admin center. So let's start with the one a lot of us are going to be going to right away. It's called the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And the Microsoft 365 Admin Center is at admin.microsoft.com. And I'm going to go there right now. Let's take a look at what this looks like. So I've got a browser open. I'm using Microsoft Edge, and I am using Microsoft Edge's profiles, which I love. And I created a profile for my spike at controlflowcorp.onmicrosoft.com, which is a tenancy we have for this class for demonstrations. And by already signing in with that profile, it tends to reduce the amount of times I'm required to sign in. It's passing in what it can, where it can by that profile. I love that about Microsoft Edge. To get to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, I'm going to go to HTTPS. You can see I've been there. It's already just filling it in. HTTPS://admin.microsoft.com. And in order to access this admin center, I have to be somebody who's authorized to do so. And I am authorized to access this admin center because in this tenancy, in this particular deployment, I have the role of what's called global administrator. I have a few other roles as well, but global administrator is the main one that's allowing me to get to this admin center and pretty much do anything I need to do administratively in this admin center. On the left-hand side, you'll see what we call expanded navigation. What I mean by expanded navigation is that you can see the actual words of what that particular area of navigation means, or what it takes you to. And then to the left of the word, you'll see icons. And eventually what will happen as you get, more comfortable with these admin centers is whoops, I didn't mean to do that, is you'll find yourself going, oh, okay, I know what those icons mean now. And sometimes you'll forget, no big deal. I don't need the words. I actually need more room on the right. And so Microsoft consistently now across the admin centers and portals, this wasn't always the case. I'm not going to say 100%, but almost 100% of them, they have the same user experience, which is this. If I click on these 3 lines right here, it will collapse the navigational controls into flyouts. So I still have access to the options, but now I have all this real estate on the right-hand side. And that's like super helpful a lot of times. A lot of times you're doing configurations and settings and you're clicking on ellipses and expanding things out. And you'll find that that's like a really helpful, useful thing to know how to do. In the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, so I'm going to expand them. When you first go there, and sometimes I don't exactly know what the rules are they have for when they collapse it, but when you first go there, you'll be maybe looking for something and then you'll see I don't see it. You'll just go ahead and click Show All, and that sort of expands the navigation down. And so that's something to keep in mind is, if you don't see the link that you're looking for, but you're pretty sure you're in the right admin center, look for that Show All button and expand everything down here and go, okay, there it is. I'm not going crazy. In addition to that Show All, which all the admin centers tend to have, there's also, you'll see these, I don't know why I call them this. I call them like the black UFO triangles. They're really called carrots. If they're pointing down, that means that there's sub menus in that area. If they're pointing up, that area of navigation is expanded out. So under users, you have active users, contacts, guest users, deleted users. So under the users navigational heading, you have these options. And typically, when that's the case across these admin centers, you typically wouldn't even click users. You would click one of these. So sometimes, occasionally, you'd still click the one at the top, but most of the time, that's a category, and then you go to one of the sub areas to do some administrative task. So if I click active users in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, that's going to be something I'm going to be going to a lot. Active users. I need to do some administrative task about one or more of my users. Maybe I need to assign them licenses. Maybe I need to assign them administrative roles. Maybe I need to reset their password. Maybe I need to delete them. There's a bunch of user management tasks that I would be asked to do as a Microsoft 365 administrator. And if I'm using the admin portal, well, first off, I know I go to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. That's the first piece of the puzzle. Then within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, I'm looking for the active users sub-menu item or link. And once I click on that, then I'm in that area. And then I begin to make decisions on where to go from here. So if I need to assign Aaron Vincent a license, I can either A, select them using the checkbox, and I might see across the top, hey, manage product licenses. That's it right there. Or if I don't see it, I may click this ellipse, and there may be other options to interact with that selected user. And if I had more than one selected, I could do it to more than one user. I'd have less actions I could do. So in other words, there's some actions that you could do with multiple users selected. And then if you just select one, there's some actions you can only do one user at a time. That's what that means. But if I want to get sort of deeper into the woods and I click on Aaron Vincent's name, to the right, a modal window means, hey, you got to interact with me to do anything, will pop up. And then now I have several tabs: account, devices, licenses and apps, mail, OneDrive. I've got some icons up here: reset password, block sign in, delete user, change photo. And then down here, I have these categories of properties about that user. Some of them are informational, and some of them I can actually do something with. If I click on licenses and apps and I scroll down, in this particular screen tells me, hey, these are all the different licenses that currently are in your tenancy. Some of those licenses, I have licenses available. Some of them I don't. So if I need to give Aaron Vincent a Microsoft 365 E5 license, well, I can look here and go, oh, okay, well, I do have them in my tenancy, but I'm out of them. So whatever my purchasing option is, however that's set up in my organization, I'm going to need to either initiate that, contact somebody, whatever it is I need to do, and I need to get another Microsoft 365 E5 license so that I can assign it to Vincent. Or alternately, unassign it from someone else, and then it becomes immediately available and I can assign it to Aaron Vincent. So these are very typical things that you do in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center: user management, group management. There's a whole set of organizational settings that you'll do, and you would do that in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So I'm going to collapse users here, and I'm going to come down here to settings. And under settings, again, that's the category. Then I've got domains, search and intelligence, org settings, integrated apps, directory sync errors, partner relationships, Microsoft Edge. We are actually going to cover all of these in this class, but for today, I'm introducing you to these are the different portals. This is what you might do in these different portals. That's why I'm not going into each individual option. But in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, under org settings, it's very common to come here, especially when we're first configuring our tenant, and set up things like, you can see, whenever you see stuff like this, these are actual tabs. So this is the selected tab. See how it's got the word underlined? That indicates, and it's got a little gray background. That's letting you know, like, hey, this tab is selected. Underneath the services tab, these are the options that you can configure. There's a lot of them from here that relate to services. And they're generally alphabetical to help you find what it is you need. And there's a lot of stuff. This is where you would go to set those things. Under security, the security and privacy tab, you have another set of options. And under organizational profile, you have another set of options. So sometimes, especially, well, it happened to me actually when I was new to Office 365 administration at the time. There wasn't Microsoft 365 when I started doing this, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. But I would go to these different settings pages and I wouldn't notice that there's more than one tab. So I'd be like looking at an online article going, go to the org settings and find the Microsoft 365 group. Well, it's time, Office 365 groups. Well, I don't see it. I go there. I don't see it. I don't see it. And like finally I'm all, oh, those are tabs. So definitely want to save you that trouble. But these are the types of things that you will typically go to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. The home page right here. So this is like until you sort of achieve a certain amount of tasks and get them done, you'll tend to see this like finish setting up Microsoft 365. And that's to help you, but eventually when you complete all those tasks, and sometimes there's a lot of them, you'll be able to collapse that and then you'll just get the full screen. Now, what you see here, this is one section. It's a little bit hard to see. Let's see if I can, yeah, make the browser smaller. And then this is called a card. And this is also called a card. And the idea of these cards is this is a dashboard view for an administrator. So I'm an administrator. Generally speaking, you come to the home page and there's like, okay, here's the cards that give you basically shortcuts to get to do activities or give you really important information. When we have our synchronization module, we're going to find that we probably, like, my eyes always go right to here. Is my syncs good? Are my syncs good? Are my users synchronizing? But they don't tend to go here. Now, you are not stuck with this particular view. You can actually edit this dashboard by clicking that ellipse up there and clicking Customize Dashboard. And what will happen is you'll get a modal window and it will show you cards that you don't currently have. So I just put the service health. I'll put Azure Active Directory. And did you see how they referred to it as Azure Active Directory, not Entra ID? So there's still a little bit of work, but down here, they're calling it Entra ID, even though in the wizard it said Azure AD. But what you could do is you can go, no, this is like really important to me, and I'm just clicking on the card and basically dragging and dropping it into the area that I think is more important, and rearranging the dashboard to what I think is important. And so you have the option to do that. You're not stuck with what's there. Typically, I'll eventually end up doing something like this. But again, your mileage may vary. You can make it however you want. Notice, and I don't know why it did this again, it collapsed the navigational menus. Not really sure what the rules are, like the web rules for when that happens. But just remember that, if you don't see the link and you think you're in the right admin center, click all. Also in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center down along the left, there's really some cool navigational links that you will find useful. And these are direct links to the other admin centers. Notice they kind of highlight the ones that I'm highlighting here because they're most common to go to. But there's more than this. If you click all admin centers down here, there's a bunch of admin centers. I'm not covering the universal print admin center here, but you could go there if you're using that, or the stream admin center if you're using that. Stream is like a private, Microsoft probably hate me for saying this, but it's a private video delivery system that's kind of like, I would call it YouTube for your organization. Again, they probably wouldn't like that, but there's a lot of opportunity to go to different admin centers depending on what you're using. But that's under all admin centers. So Microsoft 365 Admin Center, that's what I was saying when I said, hey, the Microsoft 365 Admin Center is kind of like, I would call it the jumping off admin center. Yes, you go there to do a lot of user management, group management, things like that. But a lot of times this is like the first place I go, like admin.microsoft.com, boom, I open it up. Even if I don't even have a specific thing I want to do, I know I'm just going to open that up because I can get to anywhere from there. And it's just probably a good starting point. Now, the next admin center that we're going to talk about is the Entra Admin Center at admin. Whoops, I have the wrong URL there. I apologize for that. The Entra Admin Center is at admin.entra.microsoft.com. So let me go there. I'm going to go there and then bring up the demo in just a moment. So I'm going to go, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do this, make this easy. I'm going to use my admin.microsoft.com and I'm going to go to here, all admin centers. And then I'm going to go to Microsoft Entra. The Entra Admin Center is actually at entra.microsoft.com. So I made a mistake on the slide there. But this is what we used to call the Azure AD Admin Center, sort of. So what happened is, to get to Azure AD, you could go to ad.portal.azure.com, I think, or AAD. I never did it that way. I went to portal.azure.com and clicked on Azure Active Directory. In other words, and I'll show you what I used to do all the time, is I used to go to portal.azure.com. And then from here, and it may require me to sign in again. Okay, cool. It's not going to. From here, I would click this, Manage Azure Active Directory, and I would go here. I've been doing that for the last, I don't know, 8 years. And I just like that user interface a little bit better than going direct to the portal. But now I'm going to entra.microsoft.com. It's not a direct one-to-one experience yet, but the Entra Admin Center, it's more in line with the experience of the other admin centers, other than it doesn't have that collapsible navigational menu. I'm clicking up here and it's not collapsing the words, but it does still have the expandable areas. So under identity, it's got overview. If I expand users, it's got all users, deleted users, user settings. There is some crossover. So as a Microsoft 365 admin, they're sort of like the go-to of where you go to get stuff done. And then some things that you do on sort of the regular, you're all like, I'm already here in the Entra Admin Center. I've got to add a new user or edit a user or assign a license. I'm just going to do it from here. You can. It's the same user. It's the same group. It's just that they're giving you access through two different admin centers. So that's kind of a cool thing to know. But typically, if I'm going to do user management, I'm going to do that in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. I could do it here at the Entra Admin Center. I could go to portal.azure.com and click Azure Active Directory. But most of the time, I'm going to do it through the Microsoft 365 Admin Center or using PowerShell. Now, the Entra Admin Center has categories that start to go into some of the areas that cross over into things that are considered to be more advanced options that work with things that we'll see at security.microsoft.com and even compliance.microsoft.com. And so the reason for that is because there are different versions of the Azure Active Directory or Entra ID license. When we first get our tenancy out of the box, depending on the licenses we have, we automatically get a free version of instance of Azure Active Directory that's already wired up for us. But there are other ones. There's a P1 and a P2. We'll talk about these things later on in the class. And if you get some of those more advanced licenses, it unlocks things, more advanced things that we can do that help us to harden our security. So for example, under ID and governance, this is where we have something called entitlement management, access reviews, and then the one I mentioned earlier today, privileged identity management, where we have a whole framework of options to deal with really fine-tuning and applying what's called just-in-time administrative privileges. So like, yes, you're a global administrator, but you're not actually activated at this moment. When you need to do stuff, you go through this privileged identity management framework. Somebody else gets a request like, hey, Spike needs to do a bunch of stuff as an administrator. You're like, oh, okay, cool. And then you go through that framework, and then you're allowed, you got 2 hours, like that, stuff like that. So that's the type of stuff you'll do. So in this class, we are definitely going to be digging in to these things. And you may see some stuff like, whoa, that's like, looks amazing. Come to find out like, oh man, we don't have that version. Don't, hey, at least you've been exposed to it. So that's the Entra Admin Center. The next admin center that I would like to talk about is called Microsoft 365 Defender. So it's so weird. Like, I don't know why. I feel like it should say the Microsoft 365 Defender Admin Center or the Microsoft 365 Defender Portal. No, it just says Microsoft 365 Defender. But that's at security.microsoft.com. And I do apologize if I call it the Microsoft 365 Defender Center. I'm talking about this, security.microsoft.com. And there's a ton of stuff in the Microsoft 365 Defender blank. And we will be spending a whole module just on all of these menu options. There's a lot of stuff in here, really, really cool stuff. I already kind of went over the hunting and showing you some KQL. This is probably the premier. This should almost be at the top, really, place to get started in this category of things to do. The secure score, excuse me. And the secure score is this unbelievable implementation that Microsoft has done that says, hey, we've analyzed your tenancy, and based on our analysis of all the settings across your whole tenancy, if you want to make it more hardened, do this. And when they say do this, it's not like do this and it's like have complex passwords. It's like make your complex passwords, do it here, click here, takes you to the place to do it, shows you how it will impact your users, and then shows you how that will impact your secure score. And of course, you want to get your secure score as high as possible. So what does that have to do with what we're talking about today in the admin service? Well, we have a whole module on this stuff we do in this portal, and a lot of it's going to revolve around how to get that secure score up. And that was such a successful implementation that they sort of followed that same pathway with how they do compliance. So remember I mentioned that there's amazing things going on in the compliance. If you happen to be, oh, we're a hospital, we have to be HIPAA compliant, or we accept credit cards, we have to be PCI DSS compliant, or we're a defense contractor, we have to be Department of Defense 5015.2. There's like so many of these things that, and they only matter if you have to be compliant with them. They're all probably helpful from a protecting our data perspective, but if you have to be compliant with them, that they matter. And they've made that as easy as that can be made. I never underestimate how much goes into that, but that's amazing. So the next module is compliance.microsoft.com. So sort of one thing, by the way, just total side note, whenever you're working in any of these portals, it tends to like to open new tabs most of the time. Unfortunately, not every time. So I tend to like to do that. Just right click and say, hey, close other tabs. If I don't want them open, if I'm sort of moving on. But going to the compliance portal, it's not called the compliance portal anymore. It's now called the Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal. And this is at compliance.microsoft.com. We're going to spend a whole module on what goes on in here. This is where you go to do stuff related to compliance. Okay, so that's sort of a little bit of a motto, master the obvious. It does follow the 3 lines user interface experience where you oops, sorry about that. You couldn't see that. I'm at compliance.microsoft.com. It does follow that user experience of clicking the 3 lines. So does security.microsoft.com to collapse the navigation to give you more real estate to the right. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on over here, and probably in this particular area. Now, this would depend upon what you need to be compliant with, but you'd probably be spending a lot of time in Compliance Manager, where guess what they've got? Remember they had the secure score? Well, then they introduced the compliance score. And like I said, having actually worked on IT projects where you have to, get compliant and document all that stuff and have your actions and activities and all the different controls. What they've done here, which we'll cover in this class, it's astounding to me. It's amazing. I'm blown away by it. And it makes, in my personal opinion, having, worked and had to do stuff like this, in my opinion, it makes that job as easy as that job can be made. That's, I think, a very fair statement. So we're going to be working with the compliance portal. That's somewhere you'll go. So I'm just trying to make sure that today we know, like, okay, so this is what this is. This is the URL. This is kind of what you do there. Throughout the rest of the class, we're going to be doing all that stuff. So this is like here's all the things places you need to know about. If you're administering Exchange Online, well, no surprise there. You're going to be in the Exchange Online admin portal. That is at admin.exchange.microsoft.com. And that is, if you happen to have some Exchange administrative experience, like I said, any experience that you bring to the table is going to be helpful. If you happen to have Exchange Online Management experience, then you're probably familiar with the Exchange Admin Center. This is the one that's been updated to be more in line with the other admin centers. They still, last time I checked, had an option to go to the Classic Admin Center. I don't see that anymore, so it looks like they've removed that. The reason that I'm going to just click other features and see if they have it. Oh, yeah, you have to actually go to the admin center. Boom, boom, boom. But anyways, these other features that you may take you to the Classic Exchange Admin Center, they're being moved. So if I click on this one that says outlook.office365.com and then ECP, this is the URL here, that's an indicator that this functionality, and they say right there, like, we're moving this into the Exchange Admin Center. This administrative functionality that you're trying to do, we're moving that to the modern Exchange Admin Center, new one. We just haven't done it yet. You may still have to go here. But if you've done Exchange Admin on-prem, this Classic Admin Center literally looked the same. It's not really like working really fast. So I'm going to go back here and we'll come back to that if it loads. But this follows the same pattern, right? So I've got this 3 lines that collapses the navigation. I've got navigational categories, and then under there, each of those have sub-menu options, and this is where all the action really happens by clicking one of these. So if I'm doing Exchange administration, typically I would do it at the Exchange Admin Center. If I'm working, and here's, by the way, here's what the Classic Admin Center looks like here, the Exchange Admin Center that finally opened. But they've done some movement with stuff that we've done traditionally in the Exchange Admin Center, and they've kind of migrated some of that stuff over to the security.microsoft.com. So let me go there, go back to here. I'll go to security.microsoft.com. And then there is a category called email and collaboration. And stuff that we used to exclusively do regarding email would have been put in the Exchange Admin Center, but they kind of migrated that or chose to instead implement some of the newer features here at security.microsoft.com. So this is one of those things where you're like, well, I guess I would go to the Exchange Admin Center. You're like, I don't really see it there, because you maybe saw an article or you went to somewhere you found out how to do maybe a class like this. Try security.microsoft.com, scroll down to email and collaboration. I'll bet that you'll find it there. So that's just kind of one of those things that's going on. Everything's pretty much settled where it's going to eventually be, but that's what they decided. They said, you know what, this stuff that's related more to security and compliance specifically, we're going to put it in the security.microsoft.com. So that's something else to keep in mind. Now, another place that you'll go, portal, will be the SharePoint Admin Center. And again, this is going to be at whatever your tenancy name is, -admin.sharepoint.com. So this tenancy that I'm in right now is called Control Flow Corp. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I went to a site, so it's using that, URL, but I'm going to insert before the .sharepoint.com, I'm going to insert a -admin.sharepoint.com, and then I'm going to basically take off this end. So the URL is for me to go to the admin center for this tenancy and this tenancy only, the name of my original tenancy, which was Control Flow Corp, -admin.sharepoint.com. Okay. So when I go there, if I have SharePoint Online Administrative Privileges, it will open up the SharePoint Online Admin Center. And again, I have some cards. I can add cards. I can customize the dashboard here if I want to. And then on the left-hand side, if I click this the collapsible menu. I've still got that same idea. And a SharePoint administrator in SharePoint Online, someone performing SharePoint Online administration, almost certainly is going to be going here and then here. This is the active sites page. This is where SharePoint Online Administrator does all the administration that they're using the portal for their different site collections. And you can see I don't have very many in this particular deployment right now, and that's fine. But that's kind of, you know, what we'll do when we're working with SharePoint Online. We'll come here, or we'll use the PowerShell module for SharePoint, and we'll do that. So that's another place you'll go. If you're administering Microsoft Teams, you'll go to the Teams Admin Center at admin.teams.microsoft.com. And in order to actually go to these different locations, you have to have the role assigned that allows you access to the Admin Center. And we'll see that when we work on our users module, like, oh, I'm assigning administrative roles. It literally says access to admin centers. And this is where a Teams admin would go to manage all the things about the user experience with Microsoft Teams and their tenancy. So you'll spend a lot of time here if you're performing administrative tasks for Teams. A lot of stuff you'll do will be creating policies that get enforced around the use of things like meetings, external users, what apps users can add to tabs in the channels of their teams, things like that. You're going to spend a lot of time in the Teams Admin Center if that's what you're going to be administering. Now, this one is a little bit less known depending on the experience that you have. I mean, you may be sitting there on the other side of here going, what are you talking about? I'm there all the time. But a lot of people actually aren't that familiar with config.office.com. This admin center actually allows you to create your file, your installation configuration files. And I've got to sign in here. And there's my account. Sometimes, okay. Now I've got two sets of policies on my homepage, Office policies and device configuration. It follows that same navigational principle where you have the expanding navigational controls. And then under here, under customization, you have this thing called device configuration, policy management, what's new management. You have an inventory section here. And then under device configuration, you have all of these different standard configurations that you can use to apply to different implementations of the Microsoft Office product. And we'll cover that when we're talking about deployments of Microsoft 365. So when we're coming to Microsoft 365 deployments, we're going to be talking about this coming here. So I'm going to go back to home and I'll click on Office policies, and I can create an actual configuration policy here. If I want to create a config file, I can do it there. The next admin center I mentioned, and typically this one is going to be a little bit less often gone to in this particular day and age, and that's portal.azure.com, because they've sort of enhanced what you can do at all the other portals from the perspective of a Microsoft 365 administrator. However, you will want to know about portal.azure.com, because there are still things that you can go here to get done, such as, if you want, Azure AD Privileged Identity Management. And even though you can do this here, and this is where you used to go to get this done, these days you probably want to do that wherever you can through one of the other portals. So there's quite a few different portals that we want to know about, depending on what it is that we're trying to do. And we'll go through pretty much about everything that we do. Oh, Jeff asks, does the Exchange Admin Center only for hybrid setup or for full Exchange Online? I got told that full online is just via PowerShell. That's a great question, Jeff. I'm actually glad you asked that question. The Exchange Online PowerShell, the Exchange Online Admin Center is for administering Exchange Online. Whether you are administering Exchange Online in conjunction with what we call a hybrid deployment, that's what Jeff's talking about. In a hybrid deployment, you still have Exchange installed on premises. Architecturally, there's a ton of options with how that happens. But with the Exchange Online Admin Center, it is for administering Exchange Online. You do not need to just use PowerShell. You can essentially just use the Exchange Online Admin Center and pretty much do almost everything you need to do. There's just a couple things. I can't even think off the top of my head of specifically one thing that I couldn't do either with the Exchange Online PowerShell module or with the Exchange Online Admin Center. But primarily it's done for Exchange Online. That's a great question. Now, the next section of the class that we have is talking about PowerShell. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to take a 10-minute break. It's actually kind of a nice time to take a break. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about Microsoft PowerShell. I'm going to do some demos in PowerShell. And then that'll pretty much be it for today. We'll have covered the introduction to the role, the tools, your job. It's not a deep dive on each of the individual tools. It's more like, hey, here's all the different places you want to know about. Here's the general things that you would tend to do in each one. And the next one, we're going to kind of cover that same idea with PowerShell. And I'm going to do some demos with the Microsoft Online PowerShell module. And then that'll be it for today. So we'll take a 10-minute break. See you in 10 minutes and we'll come back and we'll be jumping into PowerShell. Let me see, where's my button? There we go. All right, I'll see you guys in 10 minutes.